When the leaders of the world's two largest economies sit down at the same table, well, the ripples are felt literally everywhere. We're looking at an incredibly high-stakes moment on the global stage right now, the recent summit in Beijing between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. But here's the thing. What happens when all those public smiles and warm handshakes are actually masking some of the most complex geopolitical fault lines of our time? Today, we're going to use the information from this summit to dissect exactly what went down. We'll look at what was said, who was actually in the room, and most importantly, what was hovering just beneath the surface. To really grasp the immense gravity of this meeting, you just have to listen to the exact words used by Chinese President Xi Jinping. He said, "The world has come to a new crossroads." He actually went on to describe the current international situation as fluid and turbulent. This wasn't just your standard, routine diplomatic greeting. This was a very deliberate framing of a world in total flux. It sets a massive, honestly almost daunting stage for the bilateral talks that followed. So keep this idea of a crossroads in the back of your mind as we go, because it perfectly contextualizes the whole shebang we're about to unpack. Let's dive right into Section 1, the surface, praise and pageantry. Any major summit like this has a highly visible, carefully choreographed surface level. And at this Beijing summit, the atmosphere they presented to the cameras was characterized by remarkably warm, effusive public praise. During his opening remarks, President Trump leaned heavily into this very interpersonal, relationship-focused rhetoric. He literally told President Xi, "You're a great leader. It's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be your friend." He even noted that when there were difficulties in the past, they simply called each other up and worked it out quickly. He painted this picture of a fantastic future together, essentially glossing over years of deeply entrenched friction to really focus on the immediate, optimistic potential of their personal relationship. And hey, it wasn't just political relationship building happening here, it was heavily, heavily focused on business. Just look at the delegation President Trump brought with him. We are talking about absolute titans of industry. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang and Tesla's Elon Musk were right there in Beijing. Trump really wasn't aiming for historical philosophy here, right? His focus was highly transactional. The U.S. delegation was looking to secure lucrative trade deals, specifically aiming for China to buy more U.S. agricultural products and passenger planes. The ultimate goal here was to set up a framework to resolve differences and, absolutely crucially, avoid any repeat of the damaging trade wars and tariff hikes that got ignited the previous year. Which brings us to Section 2, the shift, history and philosophy. Now, while the U.S. delegation was leaning hard into business optimism and relationship building, the tone coming from the host nation was drastically different. We're looking at a pretty striking duality here. On one side, you have Trump's approach, direct, personal, focusing on friendship and immediate deals. On the other side, Xi's approach, sweeping, historical, pointing to a transformation not seen in a century that's accelerating across the globe. Xi was actively calling for cooperation instead of confrontation, amid what he clearly views as global uncertainty. This is absolutely crucial for understanding the whole dynamic. You literally had two leaders sitting at the exact same table, but effectively speaking two completely different languages of diplomacy. One is focused on immediate transactional wins, and the other is focused on the long arc of history and shifting global paradigms. Let's move into Section 3, the deep water, underlying tensions. Okay, time to dive below the surface. We've seen the tip of the iceberg, right? The handshakes, the billionaire CEOs, all the talk of friendship. But beneath all that optimism, the reality of the U.S.-China relationship remains incredibly fraught. During his remarks, President Xi asked a highly intellectual, really pointed question. He asked, can China and the United States overcome the Thucydides trap and create a new paradigm of major country relations? He presented this as a vital question for history and for the world, directly challenging both nations to figure out how to coexist without sliding into disaster. It's such a fascinating contrast when you think about it. While the U.S. delegation brought tech billionaires, Xi brought up a 5th century BC Greek historian. By invoking the Thucydides trap, which, by the way, is a term describing the historical risk of conflict, often war, when a rising global power challenges an established one, Xi was openly acknowledging the structural danger inherent in their dynamic. It's a stark reminder that despite all that friendly surface-level rhetoric, both sides are acutely aware of the historical dangers of their shifting power balance. And the actual, tangible friction points pushing them toward that trap, well, they're mounting. These are the critical issues bubbling right under the surface that President Trump largely glossed over in his opening public remarks. First off, there are deep differences regarding the ongoing U.S.-Iran war. Second, you've got the lingering economic scars and mistrust from past trade wars and retaliatory tariff hikes. And third, the U.S.'s ongoing impatience with Beijing regarding the flow of precursor chemicals originating from China that are used to manufacture fentanyl. Look, these are highly complex, deeply entrenched problems. A single summit, no matter how cordial, is unlikely to solve them overnight. All of this builds to perhaps the most sensitive flashpoint of all, $11 billion. That is the massive scale of an authorized U.S. arms package for Taiwan that President Trump gave the green light to back in December. Now, while delivery hasn't moved forward just yet, Taiwan, which is a self-governed island that Beijing strictly claims as its own territory, remains a profound point of contention. In fact, Xi used this summit to issue a major warning, suggesting that the U.S. and China could actually come into conflict if the Taiwan issue is mishandled. So, to put that into perspective, this $11 billion figure represents a very real, very physical manifestation of the deep geopolitical divide between these two nations. When you add all of this up, the looming Thucydides trap, the trade tensions, the fentanyl crisis, the US-Iran war, and the incredibly sensitive issue of Taiwan, you start to realize exactly why expectations for major breakthroughs were kept so low. The ultimate overarching objective of this two-day summit was actually quite simple: stability. With such a fluid and turbulent international situation, just maintaining the status quo, managing the ongoing friction, and basically preventing a downward spiral into active conflict or severe economic disruption, that was the true primary goal for both sides. And that leaves us with a lingering question posed by President Xi Jinping during the talks. He asked, can we, in the interests of the well-being of our two peoples and the future of humanity, build a brighter future together? It's a question that honestly goes far beyond trade deals and diplomatic pleasantries. It acknowledges that the trajectory of the U.S.-China relationship isn't just going to define their two economies, it's going to fundamentally shape the future of humanity. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to ponder the incredible stakes of this bilateral relationship. Are we just looking at pageantry, or will they successfully navigate these deep waters? Thanks so much for joining me to unpack the source material today. Keep asking questions and keep learning.